Bill, you're very welcome to join us today, and we're just going to go through a very practical sort of exercise in what's involved in renewing your PII at this time of the year. And I know that the common proposal form has just been reissued again, so that's now available to everybody. So you're very welcome, Bill. Over to you.
Okay, what I'm going to do is, I was actually down at a cluster event in Tralee a couple of weeks ago, and I did a presentation there on PII, what it's all about, how to go about approaching your renewal, etc. So I was trying to access that just to pull it up to go through it. But as I said, we were having various connection problems for some blooming reason this morning. But it shouldn't be a major issue. I have it coming up now. What I will do is I will share my screen in a second. Clicking on PowerPoint. PowerPoint is opening, and share screen. Share screen screen. How do I do that, Justin?
I'll let you do that. Sorry.
Here I have it. Okay. Okay. So should be able to share the screen. Right. Here we go. Now ignore the fact that that's saying essentially general practice updates. I had planned, as I said, to try and update that to reflect that it was this session today, but essentially the content will be the same anyway. So I'm going to run through this. Now I'm taking a slalom route tour through this. You'll be able to get these slides afterwards. So if anybody has any questions, they can always come back to me or Justin afterwards.
Yeah. Bill, we can't see your screen there at the moment, so. Bill, we're struggling to see your screen.
You're struggling to see the screen. That I think could be down to whatever the connectivity problems are this morning.
Okay. Do you want to send it on to me now?
Yeah, I've sent it on to you already on email, actually.
Okay, great.
I took a precaution to email it to you.
Yeah, just great. Okay. So what's the outlook for PII at the moment, Bill? Has much changed since this time last year, and there's stuff that we need to be aware of?
Good, but I'm sorry. It's looking better. I wouldn't say it's necessarily looking good. There are two new insurers coming into the market this year. They're interested in the smaller firms, which is likely to increase the competition, which means that hopefully it'll be price stabilization. It's highly unlikely that the prices are going to go down, but hopefully they'll stay the same. Now, that's obviously subject to each individual's practice in terms of whether they've had any claims, whether there's been an increase in certain particular types of business. And I'll highlight in the course of the presentation exactly what areas are risk factors as far as the insurers are concerned. And unfortunately, conveyancing is one of those, which for the smaller practice on the high street, that relies on a bit of me neck, me back, as I call it, a bit of conveyancing, etc. Now, again, if you differentiate in conveyancing, for example, between sales and purchases, sales are a lot less risky than purchases. But if you have a couple of $100,000 in conveyancing fees and you simply put it in as conveyancing, they don't differentiate, you'll get tagged in the higher rate. Whereas if you say, look, I'm primarily sales rather than residential. So if you want to start sharing the PowerPoint whenever you're ready, Justin.
Yeah, can you see that now? You should be able to see it. No,
I can't. But,
it seems like the. You see that now?
Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that slide is just illustrating what the whole purpose of it is about. It's to protect people generally. Now, interestingly enough, there was a meeting with the local bar association representatives within the past fortnight, and a suggestion came from Alan Gannon of Roscommon that we should do a system like they have in the UK to get rid of handling clients' funds, which is one of the major risk areas in terms of running away with money, but it's not going to solve the professional company insurance problem. Next slide, please. Again, the sources of the regulatory provisions, if you're particularly interested, and you have an insomnia problem, that's where you find it. Next slide, please. Again, more details. The major issue now is the Legal Services Regulation Act, which now governs the up-to-date provisions in relation to insurance. Next.
All right, 1 second. There we go.
Again, the LSI regulation covers all of those areas. The only one we're touching on today is PII. So next. This is getting into the area of what actually you are covered for. So next. They're the regulations in relation to the PII cover. It's a minimum 1.5 million. You can top up for more than that if you want. It's not obligatory, but you have to have at a minimum 1.5. You might have the once in a lifetime purchase or sale for 10 million, and you might look at now taking on additional cover to cover that particular transaction. The problem is a claim is on a claims made and notified basis. So you could purchase 2022, but a claim mightn't come through until 2023, and it's your insurance policy in 2023 that will apply. It's not like car insurance where it's the insurance on the day something happens. With PII, it's insurance when the claim comes home to land. Now, there's various other documents, and you worry about most of them. The focus one will be on common proposal form. Next. Again, there's a thing called the assigned risks pool. That's where you can't get cover. The insurers provide a kind of a get out of jail clause to allow you for 1 year to try and get your affairs in order, get back into the market. But it doesn't cover, for example, commercial conveyancing. It's a much higher cost. So it is the last chance saloon if you end up in there. Next, please. Again, runoff. It used to be that solicitors couldn't sometimes afford to cease practice because they'd have to purchase 6 years cover to cover them for 6 years of potential claim period. Now you can go into the runoff fund at minimal cost and you can safely shut down as long as you are shutting down. I'm not going to go into the whole Phoenix thing today, but it offers people who are genuinely thinking of getting out of the market for one reason or another the option of doing it with the benefit of indemnity. Next. Again, just the market, the summary, all of those. Next. The mandatory cover I've already mentioned. The cover is held by the firm rather than covering individual solicitors. So the firm will register, the firm takes out the policy, it covers those who are specified. And if somebody comes in, you notify, and there's usually no additional premium, and they are then covered. If somebody leaves, you notify, but you're not going to get a premium back in reality. And it's a third-party benefit policy. It's not for the benefit of the insured solicitor. It's a pass the parcel exercise, so that if a claim comes in, they can pass the parcel to the insurance company. Next. Free market. There are a number of insurance companies out there. It's not like your house insurance. Here, there's a specific terms agreed between the insurance companies and the Law Society and what's called the Participating Insurers Agreement. And that sets out various commitments that they give. That's a protection for the members of the profession. Again, I'm not going to bore the proverbials off you by going into that, but there has to be certain minimum standards.
Are there new insurers in the market, Bill? Sorry to cut over you.
Sorry, say again?
Are there new insurers in the market this year?
Two more coming in, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks. So that will hopefully increase competition, and they're particularly interested in the smaller firms, because the phenomenon over the past couple of years has been some of the bigger insurance companies have been shedding the smaller firms. They introduced thresholds, and they won't take somebody below those thresholds. So there were 2 years ago, there were what I call the QBE orphans. An awful lot of the smaller practices suddenly found themselves very late in the day scrambling to try and get cover. And insurance companies tend to have an appetite for the amount of business they're willing to take. And if you're not in before the gate shuts, they said, look, we're full, we don't want any more. You can have a problem. And that also poses problems for people during the year. I'll come back to that later on. Next one, please, Justin.
You see that,
Again,
Bill?
I mentioned the cover and the top up. The trigger is that it's claims made and notified. Now, one important thing is people often wonder, should I tell the insurance company about something because I'm afraid I'll get hit with a big increase? You're all familiar with the phenomenon of sending out the bill and someone says, yeah, bloody, just you made a mebs out of that. I lost the case. It's all your fault. I'm going to sue you. Even if they have no basis for doing so. And people are afraid of reporting that threat. You should be reporting things as a matter of caution, because if it's shown that you're actually willing to report everything and you're being cautious about it, it shows that you're a careful, prudent practitioner. There may come a day when you have to actually claim on it, but notifying these things, they'll look at it, they'll say, no, that's not going to be something to worry about. But if you don't notify timely a potential claim, what's called a circumstance capable of giving rise to a claim, that you know what you say, look, I hope I'll be able to do a deal with the client, or I might be able to get out of it. There's no problem with doing that, but you should still be notifying the insurance company. And it's particularly important where you might change insurers. If you have a continuity of insurance, you're with the same company for years, they might say, look, it really made any great difference. But if you change insurance companies, they might offer you a choice of any two adjacent fingers on the one hand moving in an upwardly mobile direction, as I describe it. Next one. Again, you have to have a practicing cert. If you don't have a practicing cert, you can't take out the insurance. And I'm assisting a colleague who's in kind of the wind down stages now at this stage, because 2 years ago he couldn't afford the insurance for one reason or another, couldn't take out his practicing cert, couldn't practice. And if somebody is in that scenario, generally speaking, the law society will move in fairly promptly to shut people down so that someone isn't trading. And that can have all sorts of dramatic consequences. Next. Next one, Justin. There we go. And the indemnity period, it runs from the 1st of December to the 30th of November on an annual basis. But you can take out cover for a longer period if you want to. You could do a deal for 2 years worth or 3 years worth if someone was willing to give you a guaranteed price, a bit like fixing your mortgage rate for a while. And you must then notify the law society, but in practice, the brokers notify the law society of who has cover through them. The difficulty if you took out insurance for, say, 18 months is you could find yourself mid-year, and again, running into the problem that people might not want to renew for one reason or another, or take on or switch insurers, etc., mid-year, because they tend to do it on block in December. Next one. This is just the participating insurers. You can flick down through all of these, Justin, until you come to the next slide. It's a list of who's in the market from 2021 to 2022. There'll be 2 new ones this year. There's also a list of the brokers available on the Law Society website. You can log on and you can see who they are. Shop around. Don't go to the same broker that you've always relied on if you're only dealing with one broker. You should be putting the proposal in through as many insurers as possible. Keep going, Justin. Because different brokers have different arrangements with different insurance companies. I've already mentioned all those points. So next one.
And Bill, do I have to use a broker, or can I go direct myself? Or
you can go direct, but you probably won't get an answer. Flower McCarthy in one of his sessions a while back posted about how, in terms of cyber cover, exactly, he was trying to get an answer from an insurance company and found it almost impossible. You're better off getting a broker, but be conscious. What you're paying to the broker includes a commission for the broker. So you should be asking, how much are you getting out of this, and what are you doing for me for it? These are just some slides to explain how insurance companies go about calculating the risk. They don't isolate the particular individual firm when it comes to assessing. They look at the market generally, they look at the risk factors, they look at the fact that they've taken a huge hit on other areas because of climate change, natural disasters, oil tankers blowing up, the war in Ukraine, etc. And they then try to recover across all their areas of business. So generally speaking, every element of insurance gets hit with an increase. Now, in Ireland, we've been particularly lucky, and later on you'll see the stats. Some of the figures in construction, professional liability insurance, in particular, for example, in the UK, went up by over 600% last year. Now, we've largely been sheltered. It was a relatively minor one. Next slide, please. Again, the claims experience, and just a differentiate there between the hard market and the soft market. Again, we can move on from that. You can go back and look at those afterwards. And if you don't understand it, just give me a buzz and I'll give you a one-to-one. Next one. The profitability. Again, it's explaining how all that is calculated in the various markets. Move on again. The other thing I mentioned was the capacity. Insurers sometimes have a limited book, a limited appetite, and once they've written their book, they'll shut the doors. Other markets have fared less well than Ireland. Ireland has been a relatively good market for insurers for the past number of years. And you can see the figures there. I mentioned about construction, PII, 600% last year in the UK. Next slide, please. Cyber cover. There's an element of cyber cover included in your professional indemnity insurance. And this was one of the great steals that we managed to get over insurance companies. Don't quote me on that. Chatham House rules apply on this. But the insurers agreed to have cyber cover to cover the theft of client funds. It doesn't cover the loss of the solicitor, but it covers the theft of client funds. And if you try to buy as an accountant, an architect, an engineer, or anybody else who might be handling client monies for one reason or another, if you try to buy that kind of level of cover, it would be prohibitively expensive. So that was a major plus. I can't claim responsibility for that as chair of the PII. That was down to Richard Hammond and Barry McCarthy. It happened during their era. Next. in terms of the cyber cover, then you're advised to get cyber cover above and beyond to cover yourself, your own practice in the event of an attack. But again, it's getting very expensive. The cyber risks have reduced this year mainly because of the Ukrainian war, believe it or not, because there's the embargoes on sending money to Russia, where a lot of the hacks were coming from, that it's kind of taken that flavor out of the market. Next, please.
Next.
Again, strongly recommending that you would consider taking out cyber cover. But again, that's a separate lecture. So the criteria, the things an insurance company is going to look at in terms of you, the profile of the practice. And as I said, if you're conveyancing, that's high risk as far as the insurers are concerned. Now, Richard Grogan, for example, has gone on record as saying he undertook not to do any conveyancing. He's an employment law specialist. That's what he focuses on. That's relatively low risk. So it improves his risk profile, results in smaller premium. Again, to try and improve your scenario is if you can differentiate, as I said, between the sales and the purchases. And obviously, the higher the sales and the less of the purchases, the less risk. Your fee income is a determining factor, the areas of practice, historical exposures, your claims experience. Now, many years ago, I went off on a month's holidays, and during my period on holidays, this is pre-mobile days, I was blissfully ignorant of what an assistant was doing, and it resulted in a claim. And the following year, the existing insurer quoted went through the roof, but an alternative insurer quoted less than I had paid during the previous year. And when I said, "Did you not read the bit about the claim?" They said, "Yeah, but that's never going to happen again, are you?" I said, "You mean me going on holidays, or what circumstances that gave rise to the claim?" They said, "No, the circumstances that gave rise to the claim, because we put in trigger systems." So your risk management, again, what risk management policies do you have? What system do you have for regular audit of files, not just a review? Again, I know this where somebody did a regular sit down every week, and the assistant solicitor was saying, "Oh, Justin's file, yeah, that's registered in the land registry, just waiting for the dealing number. Everything's jobs OXO." When in fact, Justin's file, he hadn't even stamped in, let alone registered. So you have to audit the file as well to do spot checks on files to make sure, if you show you have that kind of system that's likely to detect potential claims, that works in your favor. COVID-19 was an issue, but it's transient. Again, the scope of the retainer, telling people exactly what you're going to do for them, but equally telling them what you're not going to do for them. That can be important, because if clients expect you to do something, but you've been in writing that you're not going to do it, they can't sue you afterwards for not doing it. Next, please. These are just a couple of slides to indicate it's hard to get detail in terms of the nature of claims from insurance companies, but a good kind of a barometer is the complaints that go to the LSRA. And these are the stats in recent years of the nature of complaints that went to the LSRA. And as you can see, litigation, probate and conveyancing are the ones that really hit the top figures. Next one.
Sorry.
Again, you can go back over those. They're all singing the same hymn sheet, so you can skip through those until you get the next one, Justin. Provincial breakdown is interesting. Munster and Leinster are almost on a par. Now again, that would be down to, if you look at the figures in terms of solicitors, and whether their offices are, that would be understandable. Next one. The breakdown of claims by county, again, that's coming from one particular insurance company that would handle a lot of claims. So it's reflective, it's not definitive of the source. Next one. Again, the nature of claims, how they arise, statute barred, that's one for the litigators, the residential property client, commercial property, agricultural property. So you can see that they're all topping the list, and it decreases then. You can study that at night if you want to cure your insomnia, or it'll keep you awake, depending on your practice. So tips for renewal. Do you have a system for recording, monitoring, reviewing key dates, trigger dates, alarms, a procedure for dealing with absenteeism? Somebody is out sick for some reason. Now, if you have an up-to-date auditing and reporting system where there are regular updates to the file of exactly what's happening, it should be relatively easy for someone to dive in, rather than having to say, "Jesus, I'm set aside an entire day now to read Justin's file to work out what the hell is happening because Mick or Pauline is sick for the next 6 months," or whatever. Again, supervision, monitoring workloads, workflow. If you have a good case management system, you should have a button press, be able to get all of this kind of stats and talk to your case management service provider. If you don't, if you're still on hard copy files and you don't even have a register of files, you're going to be into hiding. Next one. You click through there, Justin.
Yeah, that was tips for new clients, new matters. Next
Again,
one.
The clients onboarding. But yeah, that's okay. Onboarding, again, back to the point about what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. Make sure you got compliance with 150 terms of business. You can limit your liability as well by contract. You can specifically agree with somebody, fine, I'm doing a 6 million purchase, but any claim you have will be limited to my 1.5 cover. You can do that. Now, that's a defense you'll be throwing up, or your insurance company will be throwing up in the event that you're sued on a 6 million purchase. But the principle is there in law that you can do it. Again, any disputes, questions, queries arising out of undertakings, every year you're asked to provide a list of the outstanding undertakings and the nature of them. If they're very long-tailed, insurance companies get worried about them. Now, there will be undertakings and conveyancing in particular, where you'll be undertaking to furnish a copy of a registered deed or whatever it might be. That's fine, but depending on land registry delays, that should be going through fairly quickly. There is, I'm getting a feedback from somewhere. I'm not sure why.
It was very, very beneficial. And what they'll do is they'll go through.
Can you still hear that, Bill?
Yeah, I'm getting Gary Lee coming in. So I know what that is. And just get rid of him.
You are.
Right.
There's something else running in the background, Bill, is it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get rid of it. That was Gary Lee broadcasting from somewhere.
Okay.
Now,
we have 9 minutes to go, Bill. So if anyone wants to ask us a question, we'll take it on the chat.
Long-tailed undertaking, that's a flag. Yeah, next one.
So
next one there, Justin.
Yeah.
Again, the bank's writing, what's happening with this dealing, 2 years old, 3 years old, all that kind of stuff. Again, planning for the contingencies, Murphy's Law, if anything can go wrong, it will. My comment, he must have been a bloody optimist. Next one. Dealing with complaints regularly, checking with staff, reviews, etc. Same point as before. Next one. Equally, complaints, they'll ask you about complaints to the LSRA. If you have a complaint, you have a time period to respond to the LSRA, get back quickly to them. Don't let it drag out. And you can show that to your insurance company as well. Next one. Again, being honest, don't try and hide things because it'll just come back to bite you in the proverbial. Work with the broker, but as I say, find out how much they're being paid and what they're doing for you, what insurance companies they've sent the proposal to. Next one. There are the various points. Prepare early. It's already a bit late in the day. You should have your groundwork done. If you don't, start thinking about taking the weekend out to try and put this together. Now, the common proposal form is roughly the same as last year. You should be able to update the figures and the entries from last year. And O'Leary's, for example, have a shortened form. O'Leary's will be on next week. Isn't that right, Justin? Finbar?
Yeah, Finbar, yeah. Yeah, Finbar will be on next week. Yes, can you hear me? No?
Yeah, he's coming on next week. Yeah, I can.
So
next one.
This all starts with the common proposal form, effectively, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you're in trouble, there is the helpline. Now, people have been giving out about the helpline for years because they don't pick up the phone necessarily straight away because they might be dealing with something else. But you can email, you can phone, you can ask questions, look up the members of the Professional Indemnity Insurance Committee on the Law Society webpage, check out who's in your area, have a chat with them on a one-to-one confidential basis. Next one.
Yeah, one thing just was pointed out to me, Bill, about the common proposal form was that it's an Adobe version, it's fillable, but if you don't fill it out all in one session, you need to resave it as a next version unless you have Adobe Acrobat. So people just to watch out for that. So you could save your first version and then go back to try and change it, and it won't let you change it, but you just save that version again as another version 2, and off you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so, yeah, that helpline
that's nearly the end of the show. Again, I'm not going to go into all of these things in terms of the special purpose fund, etc. As I say, if you have any questions in relation to any of those, you can come back at a later stage in relation to it. There's an awful lot of detail, but I've covered the main points already. So that brings us, I think, to about 25 minutes. So if there's 5 minutes of questions, we can take those.
Yeah, if anyone wants to ask a question, we'll take it on the chat. I mean, the first question, Bill, is what's the deadline?
Or you have to have it in, and you have to have your insurance in place by the 1st of December, and it must be notified to the Law Society within 3 days. But the earlier you get your proposal in, the more time there is for an insurer to consider it, the more time there is to shop around, try and get competing quotes, etc.
Okay, Lisa O wants to ask a question there, and she's put up her hand in the chat. So, Lisa, would you like to ask a question? Lisa?
You're on mute, Lisa.
I can't hear you. Ask to unmute. You need to unmute yourself, Lisa, please. Okay, well, we don't seem to be able to talk to Lisa at the moment. So we've talked about the helpline. What about early birds? Bill, do you have any view on early birds? If you get an early bird rate from somebody, from an insurance.
There's some insurers that are offering it, but again, you have to look at the offering. Exactly why are they offering an early bird rate? Theoretically, there should be no difference. Now, you make the broker's job much easier. You make the insurer's job much easier the earlier you get in, and it may be that for internal reasons a broker is offering an early bird rate to try and get you in earlier for their own workflow reasons, and that they're willing to cut back on their commission essentially to give you that option.
I suppose the other thing to point out, all of this is covered.
You're still on mute.
Seems to be a problem with my sound. Can you hear me there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Bill?
I can hear you, but you're talking a bit.
Okay. All of this information is available on the PII on the Law Society website. So just the common proposal forum, the dates, the phone lines, etc. One other point I wanted to make was the Bank of Ireland, the finance facility. If you're struggling to get finance for this, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, it's relatively cheap that you can stage it over the year, and obviously it's a difficult time of year for people with cash flow between PII coming into December. Other people have other priorities other than paying bills and to solicitors in December, so there's always a cash flow lull at that time. January ditto, but then in January you're facing the practicing starts to depend on the size of your practice. Depending on when you set up your practice, you could have annual insurance for premises, PI, the public liability, staff, etc., all hitting you in January as well. So it's down to the cash flow issue. So being able to finance the PII is helpful. Okay.
And what are the common just 2 or 3 issues that people are facing that you've seen in your experience as chair of the PII?
People are much more likely to complain these days. The gratitude has gone out of the client base. They expect more for less. And even last week now, I was at this Solicitors Growth Network, Flower McCarthy and Martin Lauder's gig.
Yeah.
Talking about conveyancing fees. And there was a thing put up about fees. Where would you peg it? Under 500, 500 to 1,000, etc. And there was a huge group over 4,000 euros for a conveyance. And someone said to the question, did people think they were voting for what they'd like to get rather than what they actually get? And they reran it because the conveyancing fees are down as low as 1,000 in some places, simply because if you don't do it, somebody else will. But you can't make money yet. You're running a risk. You're either doing the job properly and getting paid buttons per hour, or you're not doing it properly and you're shoving it through and more likely to make a mistake.
So I'm just going to show up there next week's and the following week's information sessions. We're just running out of time now. So next week, Finbar Jeffers from O'Leary Insurance will give insurance company tips on applying for PII. Now I know the main one was apply early. So is now early or is now late?
Now is almost a bit late. You've got another month to go, but the earlier you get in, the better. Okay,
so there's a certain level of urgency required to download the common proposal form and take a look at last year's and get to work. Yep. On the 16th of November, then we've got applying to be a judge with Andrew Cody. I know you're going to be joining us on that as well, Bill. And then on the 30th of November, we're going to be talking about thinking of retiring. So any final comments, Bill, as we go into our last minute? All of this information is available on the Law Society website. We'll be sending out the slides and a recording on Friday.
Yep. There's as I said, the slides. You can come back at any stage to talk to myself, or next week, Finbar Jeffers. You can ring members of the PII. There's the helpline. Don't be afraid to ask what you might think is a stupid question. And other than that, in general terms, as Spock would say, live long and prosper.
All right, Bill, you've been a good sport today. I know we've gone through a lot of information quite rapidly, but thanks everyone for joining us, and hopefully you join us next week for Finbar Jeffers and talk to the insurance companies and what they have to say about applying for PII insurance. Okay, thanks very much. Slán agus gur mágad. Thanks.